What's up, guys? This is Pete here. Welcome back to the Carrot Poker Podcast. There hasn't been an episode in about 2 weeks, I think, because I've been struck with some awful real life variants. Kind of got sick like twice in a row. Had internet issues despite being with apparently the UK's leading internet provider, and just loads of stuff going wrong all at the same time. But like any downswing, this life downswing seems to be clearing as I feel healthy, happy. It's like 1 billion degrees in Scotland for the first time ever, so life is good, and bringing you another episode of Hands from the Corner in this podcast, where we are going to rip to shreds the thought process of the little carrotling hopefuls and see if we can drum some sense into their carrotling skulls by going over some hand histories and basically just pointing out where they're going wrong with their thought processes and what they should be thinking in the hands that they post for review. People use my forum mainly for hand review and for other questions and just the sense of community as well. But there are loads of hands posted on the Carrot Corner Google Plus forum per day, so this makes a nice place to go and get our material for looking at the hands of other players who are playing a myriad of stakes, really, between 5 no limit, 2 no limit, through to about 50 no limit. So got a wide array of stuff here. We're going to start today with a hand that has been played at an unknown stake. So I don't know if this hand is played at 50NL, 25NL. It's in the format of big blinds, so that's fine. Not really a big deal, because we have quite a lot of info in the players in this hand. So the original poster starts by saying, totally lost how to analyze this hand, sad face. Well, original poster, don't be so disheartened as to use a sad face. Sad face without the hyphen for the nose, I should add. That's just poor sad face posting skills, just the colon and then the bracket. I mean, come on. This is 2016, right? We use the hyphen for the nose these days, surely. But anyway, the hyphenless sad face is not necessary because you should be lost lots of the time. That's what it's all about when you're starting off with hand review. And my students always say to me, oh, I don't know how to review hands. How do I? It's all very well for you saying review 5 hands of this nature for next week, but I don't know how to do it. Well, you practice thinking about the hand explicitly, so you state your thoughts in every street, you post it for review in the group, you get feedback on not just the play of the hand but your thoughts as well, and as a result you grow as a poker player. I'm always making it really clear to people that it's not just enough to be like, what do I do here, question mark. That's not a good post. I won't even respond to that. I need to hear some of your reasoning first before I critique you, because I want you to learn from the thought process mistakes you've made, not from just whether you've clicked the right button or not. That's just not going to be useful. Gone are the days of poker forums where people say call and then that's the end of the thread. I mean, come on. So middle position in the hand below is a 11-5 net over 400 plus hands. So we have a very reliable sample that MP is indeed a net and is a modest losing player. Well, I don't know. I mean, do you know that? If you're talking about him being a losing player over 400 hands, then you don't know if he's a losing player or not. If he's 11-5 though, I'd be willing to bet that he is a fairly substantial loser who doesn't do better. Unless this is 2NL, he's not going to do better than minus a couple of BB per 100 and breaking even after rake or something like that. After rake back, rather. So yeah, but please never base your conception on how good a player is by how much they're up or down over a sample less than 20, 30k at the lower stakes and much larger at the higher stakes where variance is more and skill edges are less. So Button is the other player involved here, who's 26-11 over just 50 hands, so he's unknown. We don't really know much about him. So what happens in this hand is that hero is the big blind and middle position, the 11-5 net limps. The 11-5 net has an extremely tight range. When he limps, he has about 11% of hands. But he raises the top 5, so you're talking somewhere between 5% and 11% of hands. That's what he's limping here. So stuff of the nature of 6s, 7s, 8s, ace, jack, stuff like this. We're going to see suited broadways, good suited connectors, not much else. On average, if those stats are indeed accurate over the 400 plus hand sample. Button calls as well. He's 26-11, so some kind of tight passive fish. He's going to have a similar range but a little bit wider, especially with the other player in the pot and him having absolute position. So hero checks in the big blind with the fabulous Jack Deuce offsuit, Jack of Spades, Deuce of Diamonds, so not much to say about that. It's very standard. We don't really want to blow a big pot out of position that's going to go 3-way with very limited fold equity against 2 stronger than average limping ranges. So certainly out of the question to raise here pre-flop. So onto the flop, which is Jack of Diamonds, 7 of Hearts, 4 of Diamonds. The Deuce high backdoor flush draw is in, but we don't really care about that. We care more about the fact that we flop top pair. Now, what does hero say about this hand? He says, my question is, if you pick up top pair rubbish kicker when checked the round 2, is there any better play than this, i.e. being a coward? So let's not use words like coward either, because if your rationale for not betting was actually fear, then okay, you need to reduce vastly the amount of impact that emotions have in your game. If you like experience significant fear in a limped pot, you need to work on that. But let's think of it in terms of, is there a better line than being passive and tight? That's a better way to put it. Or being conservative. So on Jack 7-4, you have 3 options. You can check fold, check call, or bet. I don't like check raising. It's just absurd. You're just massively overplaying your hand, building a massive pot. And you should note here that when you check and someone bets, they actually have a very strong range, or quite a strong range. Both of these players are nitty. They're like a passive nitty fish, and then like an absolute nit at 11-5. So if someone bets at you here on Jack 7-4, they're usually going to have Jack Deuce fairly crushed, or at least their range is going to have upwards of like 60% equity against Jack Deuce, in my opinion. So, or at least you won't be in good shape, and you'll be out of position with no fold equity and no protection. So right away, check call is going to go out the window here. It's just not going to be an option. Whatever you do, don't check this flop and then decide what to do. Like whenever you're in a spot like this, you always have the 3 potential lines: check fold, check call, or bet. You need to work out which of those lines is highest EV right away before you check. So if it turns out that betting is higher EV than both the check lines, you've just made a mistake. And if you think of checking as an option, you won't even be able to estimate the EV of it, because you've not split it up into its 2 sub-branches of check folding and check calling. You need to know the EV roughly of those in relation to the EV of betting before you decide what to do here. So check call is bad because we end up just not protecting our hand at all. If it does check through, then any ace, king, or queen just gets a free shot. Any gut shot gets to improve without us getting any value or making it fold and claiming more of the pot for ourselves, which is the sole purpose of protection, is to get more of the pot for you than your raw pot equity would entitle you to. You're basically capitalizing on fold equity to increase your EV, even though you don't expect to get called by many worse hands. It's still highest EV to bet. That's what a pure protection bet is. However, here you can get called by worse hands, because it's not uncommon for an 11-5 to peel one street with a 7 if he ever has 8-7 suited, or with like 9s, 8s, 6s, something like that on this board, maybe even pocket 10s if he's super nitty pre. It's also well within the realms of possibility that the other limper, the kind of tight fish that's running, 26-11, it's well within the realms of possibility that he also calls pretty wide with any kind of draw, gut shot, pair, whatever. And he'll have more mediocre and low pairs than the first nit will. So the upshot is that if you bet here, you're going to be in okay shape, because you are going to get called by some worse hands, and you get to protect your equity against hands that don't call you, which is much better than just giving them a free card. So betting is looking really rosy. What about check folding? Well, it's not terrible, I suppose, here, given both players look really tight and nitty, and if I checked, honestly, I'd be kind of tempted to check fold, although I hate it. You've got to bet here. Basically, like check call and check fold are both bad. You don't want to put money into the pot by checking. You don't want to fail to protect your equity when it checks through. These are just all bad. You flop the best hand the majority of the time with Jack Deuce here. Neither player is limping that many better jacks, and it's hard to flop a set or 2 pair on this texture of Jack 7-4. So your Jack Deuce is good very often. You can get some thinnish value, or at least be doing okay when money goes in by you betting, and you'll be doing a lot better when money goes in by you doing the betting than you will by villain doing the betting. And finally, like, you get to protect your equity that way, like I say, you don't by checking. So it's a clear bet on the flop. Checking this flop is just bad. There's no good way to play it after that. Like, if you check fold or check call, they're both just poor options. So that's why, original poster, you're feeling a bit confused there, is because you've not analysed the EV of check calling to check folding to betting. You need to do it that way. You can't just like decide on checking first and then decide what to do. That's going to lead you into a world of hurt. Whenever bet fold, check call, and check fold are your 3 main candidate options. Assess them all before you check or bet. Okay, he then says the MP net has never limped. The button hit a runner straight last hand with good luck, but also hasn't limped yet. Okay, so this means their ranges are like fairly tight as we expected. I pretty much just wrote it off as didn't want to lose money against such a weird play. So what happens here is that Hero checks the flop checks through, Hero checks again, and then Hijack bets pot size on the turn. Hijack's 11-5, right? Yeah, he's 11-5. The turn is a king of diamonds. He's just hit like lots of top pair. Any flush draw that he was too nitty to bet on the flop has got there. Like his range is just strong now. You check, he bets pot, you fold. I like your fold, Hero. It's really good because you're against 11-5 who's just potted a 3-way pot on a turn that improves everybody's range. This king of diamonds on the turn improves everyone's range, not just his, but the button limper and your range as well, Hero. So you really do have to fold at that point. But therein lies one of the demonstrations of why you should actually not check the flop, is that you let hands get there on certain turn cards. Your pair of jacks is not a pair of aces. It's not like really invulnerable. There are 3 overcards to it. They're going to kill your action. The board is like semi-dry, sure, but there are still turn cards you don't want to see, i.e. the king of diamonds. And so you really have to just bet flop, and you avoid this whole branch where you have to fold to the pot size bet in the turn. You're quite right to, though, because you need more than 33% equity to call a pot size bet on the turn, because you're still far from showdown. You're going to get the river's going to get bet quite often, but honestly, the net just almost never has a worse hand when he pots a 3-way pot here. He's just like picked up a pair of kings all the time. Maybe he can have like the ace of diamonds, have a nut flush draw, but that's the absolute best case scenario, and it's not even all that likely. So good turn folds. You're not going to get the showdown in one piece for that price 33% of the time. It's just never going to happen. So fold the turn. So well played on the turn. Your reasoning of, as I didn't want to lose money against such a weird play, I mean, I don't understand what that really means. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with EV, so I would just, like, anything in your thought process that I think has nothing to do with EV, I'll flag it up and be like, that's just irrelevant to me. What's that got to do with the EV of the play? I think that when people do take weird lines, like, they typically have more value-y ranges, especially like 11-5s and 26-11s or whatever the other guy is. But here, like, I don't even know why you think this is weird, because it's just like he's checked the flop back, then the kings come in the turn, it's improved a bunch of his range. There's no reason why you can't just have like top pair or some slow play sometimes as well. Nets will slow play as well, that's another thing they will do if they do happen to flop the nuts, so there's no way we can eliminate like sets and king jack and stuff from his range here either. So is there any argument for risking chips here that I can't see? Is the final question. Yes, on the flop there is, because you get to get value and protect your equity, and you don't really want to check fold on the flop, and you certainly don't want to check call. That's just horrible. So yes, there is on the flop. On the turn, absolutely not. You're quite right to fold, so good job there. Okay, let's do another hand. Right, we're going to take a hand from a newer student. So he says, hey guys, one of my homework assignments is to start posting some hands, as it always will be. Like, I'll always tell my students, post hands in the group, get community, get the regular feedback, get your thought process scrutinized, and begin to become a confident, competent hand analyzer. Like, this takes time, but the better you get at hand analysis, it's exponential. The more good stuff you'll get out of doing hand review, the more it'll help your game. The more out of game that you start hitting upon truths of EV and poker, the more you'll be able to apply that in game and then make loads of good decisions at the table. So he says, one of my homework assignments is to start posting some hands, a little out of my comfort zone here. Sure, you need to get used to it, embrace it, bite the bullet. Any feedback on how to improve future posts will be greatly appreciated. That attitude is awesome, just looking for tips on how to do the actual hand analysis. This guy's obviously paid attention in class when we did a lesson. First hand played versus unknown villain on Zoom. So what happens here is that hero's on the button with pocket deuces. Hijack. I don't think we have any information on these players here, or at least it doesn't seem to be specified if we do. But hijack raises to 22 cents, which is like just over 4x. No, sorry, it's not. This is 10NL, so it's just over 2x. So kind of too small, that sizing for a 10NL game. Like, you don't get 3-bet much when you open the hijack. You get fish in the blinds all day. You need to open bigger there. It's just horrible to open 22 cents. Should be opening 30. But anyway, hero calls the 22 cents in the button. Very reasonable. Lots of implied odds and stuff. Let's see what he says. Near the bottom of my range, but I feel a call here is fine. Well, I'd like to see a bit of reasoning. Where there's a what, there's always a why in poker, so don't just tell me that you think something's fine. Tell me why you think it's fine. And it's fine here because you have implied odds, because you could be completely wrong about why you want to call pre-flop here with pocket twos. You might, in your head, I doubt this is actually the case, because I've spoken with this player and I do think that his poker understanding is better than this. But, for example, the original poster here could think that deuces is a call because it has a pair on all flops, which is not the case. It's terrible when it has a pair of deuces. It's only a call due to implied odds, set mining reasons, position, and getting a good price to realise those implied odds. So, yeah. So, small blind calls as well. We go on to the flop, and the flop is deuce 3-8 with 2 hearts. So, small blind checks, middle position, the original opener checks, and hero's flop bottom set on a 2-tone board, 8-3 deuce 2-tone. So hero decides to go ahead and bet here, which is very normal. He bets 54 into 76, which I quite like. I think, like, if you were playing an optimal balance strategy, you'd probably bet smaller here with your range, because you'll be stabbing here a ton with a lot of your other calling range, because people just give up too much. So you'd want to give your range a good price, but there's probably nothing wrong at 10NL Zoom, honestly, here with like just picking a size that's nice and big for value and expecting no one to ever notice or know what you're doing and expect to get called with a similar range. This is a spot where either player on 8-3 deuce is either check calling or they're check folding the flop. It's not, their ranges here are what we'd call inelastic. That's to say they're not really subject to changing if we increase our sizing or decrease our sizing, within reason, of course. So when we bet like, you know, just over 2/3 of the pot here, I think it's a really good size and it's going to work quite well. It's going to help us build a bigger pot against the population. So small blind, who is the pre-flop caller, he calls. And Hero's reasoning for the flop is we'd probably bet bigger versus a known fish or looser reg. Yeah, fair enough. You could even pot it against like a known fish, yeah. Against a looser reg, I'd be careful. I just try to remain kind of balanced because those are the guys that will exploit you if you start doing obviously unbalanced stuff. He says, but versus an unknown, I went with the standard bet size. I think your bet size is a bit bigger than standard, but that's okay. He says, is there a case to be made for a half pot bet to keep both villains in the hand? No, that's not really, you're not achieving that by betting half pot. Like I say, like their ranges are quite inelastic. So if you bet half pot here, you're just building less of a pot. I don't think you cause both villains to continue all that often unless they have like reasonable draws that are going to be like correct calls anyway against you. So I don't think so, no. Or to widen one villain's calling range, yeah, maybe, but you're not widening it by much at all because again, I think their ranges are inelastic. They're not subject to change based on sizing too much. So the bigger bet is better to answer your questions. Good job. 10 out of 10 for the flop thought process there because you asked two very poignant questions and were very much to the point and you made your thought process explicit, so I was able to see what you were thinking. So you could have done that pre-flop a bit more, but on the flop, good job. Okay, on the turn, we get a 6 of spades turn. So the board is now deuce of spades, 3 of hearts, 8 of hearts, 6 of spades. We still have bottom set. We're heads up here, just us in the small blind. Small blind checks, pot's 184 with about 850 or so remaining. Is that right? Let me just see. No, about closer to $9 remaining, just over. So Hero bets 132 into 184. I'd like to see a bigger bet here, for sure. I'd like to see you bet probably more along the vicinity of, somewhere around the vicinity of like 150, something like that, because again, the 6 of spades, this is usually a fish who flats out the small blind. Not always, but usually it would have been helpful to see, like, if you've got any reads or stats on the players. That's something I would include next time, because you might know nothing at all, which is absolutely fair enough, but if you do know something, you want to include that. So we still have bottom set, we bet 132, and small blind shoves all in for the full about $9 total, about another $7.70 to Hero effective. So, original poster says, similar bet sizing, questions is on the flop, when villain ships, I can't see how this can be anything but a set. Well, that's a humongous, massive leap. Like, if this is a weaker player, this can be so many things. It can be 8-6 suited, it can be like a pair plus a draw, like an 8 with a spade draw, it can be pocket 9s, 10s, jacks overplaying itself. Like, that is an enormous leap that I'm really not happy with at all. You say overpairs are out of the question. Yeah, they're not likely, but 9s, 10s, jacks could play that way. Honestly, like, unless you're going to tell me what kind of player this actually is, maybe you've said I can't see a reg making this play, and if it is a fish, could I possibly find a call? Yes, if it's a fish, you absolutely call, because it's really hard to make a set, and fish will shove like random draws here sometimes, overpairs, 2-pair, that kind of thing. Like, if you have pocket 3s, it's a no-brainer call against anyone, but also, like, ripping in a set for this amount of money is not a good thing to do. Ripping in anything for this amount of money is ridiculous, and so I don't think this is a reg. Unless you have reads that this is a reg, which you don't because you seem to be questioning the player type, the bet sizing alone, the mere bet size he picks on the turn alone is just a clue. Like, what kind of player flats out the small blind, flats the flop, and ships the turn enormously? A bad player, a fish. So no, you can't fold, because there's just too many ways that you can be good here. Like, with a set, there's only 9 combos of bigger sets that you will run into them sometime. Yeah, I can't do much about that, I'm afraid, but you will see draws, you will see pair plus draw, and you will see overpairs here. For this price, it's often a hand like jacks or whatever, just trying to like shut down the action, and he's just scared because the board's wet. There's just so many other things this can be, and you don't need all that much equity to call here. Like, sure, it's a big raise. You're calling about 770. Is that right? Yeah, I think you're calling about 770 or something like that into a pot that's already like 12 plus 7, so like 7 into 19. What does that make? Let me just bring my calculator up and calculate required equity here roughly, which is what you should always be doing in this type of situation. Apologies for any YouTube users that see my Mac menu popping up all over the screen. Look, there's the calculator anyway. So we're calling about 770 divided by about 19, just doing this roughly to save time. So we need about 40% equity. Like, we don't even need to be good half the time. We need to be good just less than half the time. You need a read here to fold. You need to think villain is a tightish reg or something like that, or like a tight, very passive fish or something that you can't just full button set to a random fish. There's too many hands you can have. You need to think about combos here. One way that you're going wrong is that you're thinking purely in terms of cognitive likelihood. You're thinking, how often does a player have the thought to shove a non-set here? Not that often, but also sets are really damn hard to make. There only are 9 combos of them. If there are just 6 combos of other hands, you're going to have a call here because you're going to be good like 6 out of 15 times. That's going to be like just about good enough to call. So yeah, you've got to think about it that way. You only need 40% equity basically. So just a few combos, 1 overpair combo, like just jacks and then the rest sets, that's like break even call. Add a couple of draws in there, it's plus EV. Honestly, does a set play this way even that likely? I don't know if it's even that much more likely cognitively if villain is a fish than a hand like jacks is, and I think like villain is a fish. Also, you'll see slow played overpairs here that are starting to freak out sometimes. If villain is a fish, which it seems he is, it's not unheard of for him to flat kings or aces pre and play this way. So you have to call, definitely. But good job, like kind of making all your thoughts clear. I think that's just too nitty though, that fold. But the rest of the hand could have been a bit more explicit pre-flop with your reasoning. But other than that, good job. I like the way you've analysed it, very professional, and a good start to your hand posting career in Carrot Corner. So well done. Okay, so that's another day, another podcast, another 2 hands analysed. Let me know what you think of this format. Email me, admin@carrotcorner.com, if you've got any ideas for the podcast. You want a copy of my book, head to carrotcorner.com, get yourself a PDF. It's £39.99. Or you can go ahead and get it from the Kindle store. It's the same price if you want it for Kindle format. I get less money though, so that makes me sad. But whatever, it's on both formats for you to choose between. I don't know about a hardback or paperback book coming out. I don't know if I've got enough publicity yet. It's something I need to work on, and I'll let you guys know about that in the future. And if you want coaching, carrotcorner.com is the place to go, or email me at admin@carrotcorner.com for that as well. So see you in the next podcast. Sorry about the delay. Running good in life again now, it seems, so we should be back on track for 1 podcast per week, as you guys like. So yeah, I will see you on the next one. Let's play the outro music.